Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, well, my number one is the aforementioned Splinter Cell Blacklist. I played it on the PlayStation 3, and it's also available on PC, Wii U, and Xbox 360. You did the mandatory install, didn't you? You did the texture installs on.
That's right. Yeah.
How did it look?
I played it for about 15 seconds, didn't I? So I can't really comment.
Okay. Well, all right, there's on PS3. There's a mandatory install which takes about 25 minutes to install. But the game looks pretty good. Basically, I think it's just shy of being excellent. I think it's a really fucking smart game. People are very fond of bitching about Splinter Cell Conviction. Did you play that?
Very, very briefly.
Okay. Because that really was taking it in a new direction and away from stealth almost entirely. I thought it was fine because if you recall what came before Conviction, it was Double Agent, which was an absolute washout of the game, and it highlighted the fact that it did need to be rebooted. And I thought Conviction was a really good reboot. It was an action game. Stealth was almost non-existent. You could just kill whoever you wanted. You didn't have to take any care over what you did, but it was very, very polished, very, very entertaining. This is a very calculated split between half of what Conviction was, but half of going back to the original trilogy of Splinter Cell games. So it's very, very hardcore stealthy. At points, oppressively so, and that's what fans are really, really interested in. It's now a series that's as obsessed with the military as Call of Duty is. And
yeah, big time.
Yeah, the plot and all of the kit that you have, but yeah, the plot is very simple. There's rogue soldiers called the Engineers, and the Blacklist is a series of attacks that they're conducting because they want troops to come home from sort of war zones and stuff like that. It reminded me of Die Hard, actually. Just what the terrorists pretended they were after. It's really, really good, and it's polished in a way that Ubisoft games over the last couple of years. I've praised Ubisoft so much because they brought out a load of high-end games that are much more thoughtful and experimental than they're ever given credit for, but also work fantastically well as games and look the part. I mean, Far Cry 3 is a great example. Assassin's Creed 3 is another great one, although it's a bit more divisive. I just really enjoyed going back to something that was really hardcore stealth. There are sequences where you're holding up on the pad and pressing a button, and it's Uncharted. I mean, Uncharted has infected every action game for the last few years, and this is not. This is exactly the same. There's bits where you're sprinting through pyrotechnics and you're not really interacting with the characters, but it works because it's done very sparingly. It's hokey as all hell, and one of the first things that happened, I laughed out loud because I thought, are you really? This is what Sam Fisher is. Basically, you're in sun-drenched Libya and you're walking around, and Sam Fisher is incognito and he's got a rucksack on his back, and he gets a call from his superiors saying, you've got to go and do this. And so he says, I knew this would get messy. It fades to black, and then it fades straight back in, and he's in his Splinter Cell gear. And I'm like, he was carrying that around in his rucksack, so he's basically fucking Superman now. He gets a call, he's changed instantaneously, and he's walking around Libya, back streets admittedly, but he's now essentially Superman. Ridiculous. Aside from a couple, and you mentioned it before, I can't believe they fell back on the cliche of having that techie guy attempting to make wisecracks and just being the light comic relief. He's
saying dude.
It's awful. But when he tries to be funny, I'm like, he's just annoying. I don't care how high up, I don't care what facet of the government you work for. You would just put a bullet in that guy's head. Just being needlessly oppressive and you just be like, I don't want to deal with that person. He has no, yeah, it's a Hollywood trope that they've adapted, and I don't really know where they've done it. It's really difficult in the way that the first few Splinter Cells games were, and you realise straight away that in Conviction, for example, you kill people, they're dead. That's the end of it. In the original Splinter Cell games, of course, leaving a dead body in the wrong place, you failed the mission, and that's very much the case here. You have to be very, very careful, and there's one bit about a quarter of the way through where you have to switch off. You're in this water refinery, and you have to stop this poison from flooding the water, and it's a set piece that it took me about 20 minutes, and if you fail it, you're straight back to the drawing board. Like the old Splinter Cell games, it's quite unforgiving, but this is in between bits where it regularly saves and there's action and stuff like that. It's split between 3 play styles, so you can go Ghost, which means you take everyone out but you don't kill them, and you're permanently stealth. There's Panther, where you take everyone out, you're permanently stealth, but you kill them at the same time. And there's Assault, where you just play it like an action game. There aren't a lot of places where you can do the Assault playthrough because it is so fucking difficult. I mean, even on normal, it's right back to those old Splinter Cell games, and I think a lot, hardcore fans, this is the game they've been waiting for. They may not like some of the bits where you're sprinting through exploding buildings and stuff, but by and large, this is the game they've been waiting for. And as a fan of the first lot of games, although I did like Conviction as well, this is I think it's basically fucking excellent. Even there's a real trend in action games at the moment where at some point, I've lost track of how many times I've done this, but halfway or after through the campaign, you'll be captured, and in this case, a lot of people are already away. At one point, you're in what's basically Guantanamo Bay, and you're captured, and then you're stripped of all of your kit, and then you have to escape. Despite the fact that I feel like I've done that a million times, it really works. Because it has that Ubisoft polish, that Ubisoft, where you feel like they've thought about every aspect of it, and you're open to experiment so much of the time, which is something you could not do in Conviction. Everything was very narrow. Here, it's opened up, and you feel like you can genuinely play around and try different things. It's basically pretty fucking great. The multiplayer stuff is really good. Spies versus Mercs versus what was it called?
Yeah, I think it's Spies vs. Mercs, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. I'd never played that, but 5 minutes and I was completely aware of the praise was completely justified, because you're either first person shoot when you've got things like grenades and you can't. It's basically a first person shooter where you move slowly, you've got grenades, and you can't take cover versus Splinter Cell, and it seems so balanced when you're in 3 teams of people who are communicating. It's great. There's loads of co-op stuff. It's all integrated into the map HUD, like a lot of games are these days, where they try and sort of throw all of the content into one sort of HUD interface. Like the Bureau, which I spoke about a couple of weeks ago, it owes a lot of a debt to Mass Effect 2, because you're on this plane and it's basically your ship, and you can go to get kit upgrades from different people, or you can go and get sort of missions from them. And there's stuff like weekly challenges, so you can sort of all that standard stuff, earn extra money in co-op and multiplayer. There's even a deathmatch mode which actually works surprisingly well, and none of it feels tossed off. None of it feels like it's sort of secondary to anything else. It's a polished. It's basically pretty fucking great, I think. I finished it earlier today, and I might be tempted to go back and try and do it on one of the harder difficulties. It's really good. I liked it a hell of a lot. There are bits of it where you end up holding your breath. I mean, there are some really tense moments. The action stuff doesn't. I reckon that sort of makes up for about 10% of the package. This is a stealth game. And there's great. I mean, you can really. It's really. Sam Fisher's really customizable. All of his kit you can customize. All of that stuff is really, really involved and really polished and well thought out. I'm surprised it hasn't got quite the sort of critical response. I think Conviction was more well received than this, which is a bit of a shame, because this is. I mean, it is fucking difficult. I don't know why there's an option for Assault at this point, because. Whenever things go loud, you're dead, and that's just on normal. There's 2 difficulty settings above that. I don't know how you're supposed to play it and try and get Assault points, because god damn, it's hard. But I really, really recommend it. Fucking cool game.